All right, today we got John Carpay. John Carpay's his entire career has been fighting for Canadian justice and fighting, the insanity that's coming on a daily basis. I consider John a Canadian hero, just like the other heroes that are patriots for this country. So welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for the kind words, and glad to be with you and with your viewers and listeners, Mark.
Yeah, we learned so much from you. So every time I do a show with you, I see in the comments like, yeah, have John back on. So, what you're sharing with the audience is very valuable, and we appreciate you.
Well, thanks. I'm so glad to be with you today.
All right, we have some exciting stuff to talk about. So on a daily basis, usually we have bad news. Hey, we got bad news for you guys, Canada. But today we actually have some good news for Canadians, and it relates to how is it possible that the government could tell you not to go into the forest? I mean, is grandma's sticks walking in on a trail, a clear trail? Because normally you're not able to go into the woods because you're going to wreck nature, but there's well-defined trails, and they completely banned people last summer in Nova Scotia from even looking at the forest. If you look at the forest, that's going to be a $25,000 fine. And that's what we thought. But then we had a great Canadian patriot that said, you know what? We're not going to continue this. This is completely absurd. And it's just great that somebody stepped up because, and it was Jeff Avery. Jeff Avery, if you watch this show, thank you so much for being a Canadian patriot and stepping up for us Canadians, because it gave a lot of Canadians that pandemic feeling where, hey, they roped off the forest, and that traumatic stress came back saying, wow, now we can't even go in the forest. And I kind of felt it, and I wasn't even in these mandates. I was all the way on the other side of the coast in BC, and I'm like, you better not think to do that in BC. The entire province is a forest. So we got this ticket. And we could go into the details, the reason that they needed to have a ticket, because I believe Jeff Avery, he wasn't able to fight the 2021. I believe they tried to do the same thing, but because he didn't get a ticket, he wasn't able to fight the ticket. So you actually need to have a physical ticket. But when he received the ticket, and everybody thought, okay, it's going to be $25,000, and $25,000 could bankrupt somebody. I mean, it could ruin somebody's life for just going into the forest. And it came up to basically, if you round up to $29,000, and I'm like, what's the additional $4,000 for? And they said it was for court fees and taxes. There's taxes on a ticket. Anyway, we got some update here, so let's listen to what John's got to say.
Well, this decision was rendered on the 44th anniversary of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms coming into force. Happened to be April 17th. I'm not sure if the judge he didn't say in his ruling if he was trying to release it on the same date, but from, myself, with my legal career devoted to defending our charter rights and freedoms, I notice April 17th each year, because that's when the charter was added to our Constitution in 1982 on April the 17th. We already had a Constitution, but this was a new addition to it. And so kudos to Jeff Avery for having the courage. Like, when he got this $25,000 fine, it was quite deliberate. He had his cell phone. He was recording himself. He was explaining how ridiculous it was. He said, this is the woods. This is not the woods. This is the woods. This is not the woods. It was a very vague law. Woods included bogs, which are wet swamps. It included areas with no trees where there used to be trees. It included barren rock. It was a really weird, vague rather. It was a very vague definition of what the woods were. But woods do cover 75% of Nova Scotia, and that's probably a high percentage for most Canadian provinces, right? Like you said earlier, British Columbia, where I grew up, is one big forest, basically, with little bits of land for towns and cities carved out. But I mean, the whole province is a big forest. So anyway, kudos to him. It was courageous, because he didn't know ahead of time if he would win or lose. And if he had lost, well, I guess he'd have to set up a give, send, go fundraising page to get people to pitch in to help them pay the 25,000 plus the taxes and surcharge, this and that. So we got this ruling on Friday the 17th. It said that this ban was an assault on our mobility rights. It traced our mobility rights go right back to Magna Carta in 1215. So 811 years ago, we had this historic benchmark where Magna Carta was the first victory for the people in limiting the power of the king, taking some steps towards establishing the rule of law, equality before the law. Magna Carta is a big turning point in our political and legal history. So even in Magna Carta, it recognized the freedom of movement, that you and I and everybody else, part of being a free human being, part of a core human right is that I can move about freely. I can enter and leave the country freely, and I can move around within the country freely. And so it's a protection against things like, curfews or show me your papers, you can't go in there. So the court struck down Nova Scotia's ban on walking in the woods, which was a ban that it was not just walking, but it was hiking, fishing, swimming, boating, bird watching, camping, picnicking. You couldn't do anything in the woods. It was an anti-people law. They could have and should have instead said there's a high forest fire risk. Nobody disputes that. It was a very dry summer in Nova Scotia last year. There was a high risk of forest fires. But so you ban smoking, campfires, and cooking, right? No, total ban on people going into the woods. So I'm thrilled this got shut down. The court shut it down, ruled against the Nova Scotia government on April 17th, on the 44th anniversary of the Charter.
Wow. I have to say, I did see that they're like, well, you can't even kayak in the middle of a lake. I said, wow, this is extreme. Like you can't even, well, actually, I think the lake was fine, but there's no ability to get to the lake. So, and another thing is, like I said, grandma's sticks are not starting fires. So it was completely out of control what they were trying to do there. And I believe the reason they did this is because they failed. They failed to get enough, water bombers. They failed to do all of the necessary things to protect the forest, like, forest management. So it's just, instead of dealing with the problem and doing the right thing so that we could all enjoy the forest, they just said, you know what, we're just going to shut it down. And
that's like COVID with our, we got to take away your rights and freedoms and prevent you from having Christmas dinner with your parents or with your kids because we've got this hospital problem. The hospitals might become overcrowded with COVID patients, which first of all is a big lie. It never happened because in March and April, the hospitals were empty. I mean, there's abundant evidence. Everybody was so scared of COVID, everybody stayed home anyways. So the hospitals were not flooded. And they kept on violating our rights and freedoms, not just for months, but for years on end. More and more and more, a new wave of lockdowns over and over again to protect the hospitals ostensibly. But it's like, why don't you get your act together and have a better health system like what they have in most of Europe and many Asian countries? You've got a better healthcare system. And instead, a rotten, lousy healthcare system becomes this pretext. So they're screwing up healthcare. And that becomes a rationale for telling us that it's illegal to hold the hand of a dying parent in a nursing home, and it's illegal to go to your grandfather's funeral because they're screwing up on healthcare. So Nova Scotia is like that. They don't have their act together on protecting the forests. So it's like, well, let's ban everybody from the woods.
Yeah, and one of the things that really, really bothers me is mainstream media and all the media outlets, they protect the message of the government. They don't question, like you said, hey, maybe we should improve our hospitals. Maybe we should buy 500 water bombers that are made in Calgary. Like, yes, we have to ramp it up, but let's invest in these. And then we could sell them to the world and we could imagine we had 550 water bombers. I think we only have like 37. So we'd be able to not only turn out fires, but when it gets tinder dry, we could start watering the forest like we water our lawn. Go and pick up some water from the lake and drop it on the forest. You could do things like that. But it's always, the one thing I notice with this government is they want us to accept less, sacrifice more, set expectations so low that we're going to accept just cookie crumbs. And for example, the speech that we saw from Mark Carney on Sunday, he's basically set the stage for we're not going to get a trade deal. So when he gets us a very, very bad deal at the end of the day, well, we got something. This is exciting, Canada. But they always just set the floor just to the ground. I just saw these shacks. They have $4,800 a month for it's this 2x2 shed. And they're spending $4,800 to maintain this is housing for people. And I said, $4,800 for that piece of wood? That is absurd. I'm going to put a link so that people can see what I'm talking about if you haven't seen this 4x4. But, we need to raise the bar. So I'm so happy to have you on the show so that we could educate people to say we could have better. And this is what it looks like. So, you do a great job educating.
Well, thanks for the kind words. A big part of this is this belief that mankind controls the weather and that global warming's a bad thing and that we're not capable of coping with it. And, those are claims that we hear thousands and thousands of times over the course of a year. Every radio show, every TV show is telling us that mankind controls the weather. Global warming is a terrible thing. We're going to burn to a crisp, and that mankind is not capable of adjusting to climate change, and also kind of pretending that climate change is this new thing that's been happening the last few decades. The truth is, climate change is normal. It's been happening for thousands of years, if not millions of years. 1,000 years ago, during the medieval optimal, historians acknowledge the world was 4 degrees warmer than what it is today. And mankind thrived and flourished and prospered. We had abundant harvests. We had agriculture in Greenland. We had vineyards in England. And this global warming was a part of human prosperity. And it was a very good thing. And then from there, we went into the mini ice age. Things got really cold, several degrees colder than what it is today. That was really bad. Global cooling is really scary for agriculture, for harvests, for starving to death. And, now the last 200-300 years, we're slowly pulling out of this mini ice age. So climate change is it's totally normal, but they've come out with this idea that we control the climate, which is pretty far-fetched. And even though it's been claimed thousands of times, when you start to research, what's the actual evidence for this, what you get then is just a lot of name calling. It's like COVID. They're going to tell you that if you don't believe that mankind controls the weather, then you're an anti-science Neanderthal and you shouldn't be heard. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing all this up is we could have a higher standard of living. If we fully developed our oil and gas resources, we could have a much higher standard of living. Sorry, that was the point I'm making. We could have way more money than what we do now for everything, for healthcare, for education, for you name it. We could have a much higher standard of living if we fully developed our oil and gas resources. But the last 20, 30 years, we have this very anti-development mindset, particularly in BC, but it's all across Canada and the federal government that is limiting the investment. And we're just not taking advantage of the resources that we actually have.
Yeah, knowing that is that we do things a lot cleaner than the rest of the world. So, for example, if we sold our natural gas to the world, we would displace all the dirty coal, and just by doing that, just if we replace all the coal power plants in China with our natural gas, that would reduce emissions by 3.8 billion tons of CO2, which I've done the calculation, and Canada only emits 700. So if that's like how many times over, right? I mean, we would be able to offset all sorts. But, the thing in Canada is we always just look at, Canada's air stays in Canada. It doesn't go around the whole planet. I mean, that's what they actually think. It's like, no, if we actually did something on the other side, that air is coming back to us, guys. So we need to start thinking bigger, like the global thing. And then another thing a lot of people don't understand is, Right now we're at 4 parts per million. 4 parts per million. This is a trace gas we're arguing about. And if it goes down to 230 parts, we're at 450 or something when you look at it. And then if we go down to 235, plant life doesn't exist. Like they need carbon, right?
So we've got the carbon dioxide is plant food, and it's being classified as a pollutant. I mean, this is insane. Plant food is not a pollutant. And if we're actually serious about this, then we need to put pressure on China to stop building new coal plants and using coal. It's just ridiculous that we are okay with China, which is competitor and contrary to what Justin Trudeau thinks, not a country worth emulating in terms of their basic dictatorship. But we're all these people supposedly terrified of the world, a climate holocaust, and we're all going to burn into a crisp. I don't see these people calling for China to stop building coal plants. So right there, the whole thing's a hypocritical charade. It's like the land acknowledgements. It's hypocritical virtue signaling. You got people saying that, we're on unceded traditional territories of such and such groups. And yet these very same people, I don't see them giving away their condo to an Aboriginal person or giving away their house or their property to an Aboriginal person. So it's hypocritical virtue signaling. And it's the same thing with the climate agenda, where it's like, oh yeah, well, China can do whatever they want, but we Canadians have to slowly slide into poverty in order to save the planet.
No, not only that, is like, if we want to be a strong sovereign country, like they're describing, like we need to stand up to Donald Trump. The whole thing is, it's if we had a pipeline east to the East Coast, we're buying natural gas from Australia. Like, what is going on here? Like, and we're buying like a cargo gas filled with tankers from the other side, from Russia. I heard we bought some from Russia. We need to stop and start using what we have for us Canadians and building it out, like getting refineries, being energy independent, getting nuclear so that we have options, more electricity. I heard, I think it was last week or the week before, and Pierre Poilievre told us that for our Canadian history, we've never been short on electricity. For the first time in our history, we're short. We're importing electricity, and they're telling us they want to mandate us into all these electric vehicles. We can't even service ourselves without these electric vehicles. It's out of control. I'd love to talk to you about the First Nations now that you've mentioned it, specifically what's going on in BC. And David Eby, there's a lot going on. Can you give us an update there?
I have not been following what David Eby's been doing and saying. I apologize. I can say, though, that the Musqueam Agreement, I've read it. It's not that long. It's available online. It is unequivocal in saying that there is Aboriginal title, Musqueam Aboriginal title, and Aboriginal title legally is the right of ownership. So if Aboriginals have Aboriginal title to a piece of land, it means they own it. It's not just a right to hunt and fish. There can be those rights as well. That's a Constitution Section 35 right to hunt and fish only for your own sustenance. If you want to fish commercially, you've got to take part in the regular commercial fishery. Anyway, it's kind of ridiculous to sign this agreement, which, by the way, the Cowichan and the Tsawwassen and the Squamish were not consulted on this. You've actually got the Squamish. You've got the Squamish reservation is now sitting on land which the federal government says belongs to the Musqueam. I mean, you've got 4 different groups here. Property owners were not consulted. The British Columbia government says that they were not consulted. The Constitution gives the province jurisdiction over property and civil rights in the province. I mean, it's just either David Eby is lying through his teeth about not being consulted, or he was consulted and he's okay with this. Both of them are very bad. So you have property. The fact is, if you own a home, or secondarily, if you're a renter, it's going to have an indirect impact on you as well. Okay, but let's just talk about homeowners. If you own a home in Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, West Vancouver, North Vancouver, Richmond, parts of Delta, parts of Surrey, parts of Coquitlam, parts of Port Moody, parts of Port Coquitlam, I got Burnaby and New West in there, right?
Yeah,
So,
and I believe it's 2 million properties, John.
yeah, 2 million properties. So your property title is in jeopardy. If you try to sell your house right now, you're going to get less money for it than what you would have 3 months ago or 2 months ago before this became public. So they're trying to say, well, the agreement doesn't mean what it says. To which I would say that why sign it? Like, it's just so stupid to sign a contract, right? Let's say you were going to sell me your car and we agree on a price for $5,000. We sign a contract. I'm going to pay you $5,000. You're going to sell me the car. And then afterwards, one of us says, well, it doesn't really mean $5,000 and it doesn't really mean this car. Like, it's ridiculous. Why go through the motions of signing something if it doesn't have meaning? But
no, it has meaning though, John. It has meaning. So if you have Aboriginal title on your property, one thing that people don't understand with Aboriginal titles, not even they want us to pit us against the First Nations. The First Nations have nothing to do with this. They actually don't own the land. When you have Aboriginal title, the Crown owns the land. They get 99-year leases on these Aboriginal title. So they get the benefit of having, they could develop, they could do things, but it's on 99-year lease. When was the last time you saw permanent fee simple on Aboriginal title land? It doesn't exist. It goes to the Crown.
Yeah, the reserves in Canada are practically and effectively, they're owned by the federal government more so than by the individual Aboriginals. But what you can see from the Cowichan decision, August 2025, David Eby stepped up and said that there'd be a taxpayer bailout for these properties in Richmond. So I agree with you that ultimately it's Crown land, but it's problematic for people living in Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, Richmond, North Shore, etc. It's problematic if the Musqueam have Aboriginal title, which this agreement that was signed in secret in February expressly says that the federal government is recognizing Aboriginal title over Greater Vancouver. It's
so one thing is, so people are aware, this Cowichan, where it turned over to Aboriginal, the land value or the value of the properties there now are down 40 to 50% today. So maybe if all of Vancouver and the 2 million properties that they've just given away, maybe that's the thing. Don't worry. Your property will be worth nothing. So we'll be able to take care of you because the amount is something like $700 billion worth of value. It could be. So how are they going to come up with that money? Because we're already broke in BC. There's no money. There's no money. There's no way they could pay us all out fair market value. It'll be worthless. I mean, and that's also why I see if you look at the BC polling numbers, even NDP supporters are like, this is a big problem. And they're like, you know what? We're supportive of the, NDP, but we're not supportive of this. And even at that, David Eby was yesterday saying we're going to continue with the First Nations. I mean, we're going to continue with this whole thing. I'm like, wow, he's not stopping. So we need change. We need change quick because he's rapidly moving forwards with this program.
This is not something that it's so sad. As you say, Mark, it's pitting Canadians against each other. You don't achieve reconciliation by going after the homes of the Asians, Europeans, African, or descendant, people that have come here. The last 500 years, we've had Asians, Europeans, and Africans have moved to what is today Canada in large numbers in the past 500 years. So that's 95% of the population is Asian, European, African. Then you got about 5% of the population whose ancestors came here more than 500 years ago, and that's the Aboriginals. but we're all settlers, all of us, or descendants of settlers, because the Aboriginals are settlers here as well. They came here from elsewhere, they settled here. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we have a legal distinction between the 95% of Canadians whose ancestors came here within the past 500 years, and then the 5% of Canadians whose ancestors came here more than 500 years ago, and say, well, we're going to divide you, and there's going to be special rights for the 5% because like your ethnic groups have been here more than 500 years, and the other 95% get lesser rights, fewer rights, because your ancestors have been here only 500 years. It's just insane. There is no reason to have any race-based laws or race-based distinctions today. And the silver lining on the cloud of this Musqueam agreement is maybe this is a wake-up call to say that the foundation for reconciliation is equal rights for all, special privileges for none. The moment that we start to recognize that you can have special rights and privileges based on your ethnicity or your race, your ancestry, the moment that we have race-based laws is the moment that we have a breakdown and conflict and strife, and we do not achieve reconciliation.
No, that's the thing. It pits everybody against each other. But realistically, it's coming from one source, and we know what that source is. I mean, we want the average person, including myself, want the best for absolutely everybody in Canada. And I don't see race. I don't see, gender. I just see a human being that should be loved and appreciated, and it should have all the same opportunity as everybody else. And what they're doing is pitting each other against each other, and it's wrong what they're doing. For example, like I was born in Burnaby, BC. This is my home. This is where my life started. So how could someone tell me that I don't belong here? Where do I belong? Like, I don't, my ancestors don't I'm here. This is me. This is where I came from. This is my birthplace. This is all I know. How could they say that I don't belong here? Where do I belong?
Yeah. You're indigenous to British Columbia, and it shouldn't matter whether you can trace your Canadian-born ancestry back for 5 or 10 generations or 50 generations. Like that shouldn't really matter. That there should be like a legal distinction between you and somebody else based on how many generations back do you have Canadian-born ancestors. Like if you go back far enough, at some point nobody's got Canadian-born ancestors, because even the Aboriginals at one point, they moved here. They just moved here earlier than other ethnic groups. Why that should be a basis for race-based distinctions in law in 2026, it just makes no sense. Like equal rights for all, special privileges for none. It's the only way to have harmony between people. And what David Eby and a bunch of other, I don't want to focus on him, but what a lot of politicians have done and are doing is they're creating these divisions. It's like, well, you're Aboriginal, you get special recognition, special legal rights, etc., and you're not Aboriginal, so you don't. It's sick.
Yeah. And what's also frustrating is they make it like this discussion that we're just having, which is rooted on love, controversial. This should not be controversial. It's rooted on what's the best for everybody. And they'll pit it as controversial. It's because we're actually bringing light and truth on the situation. And they don't like that. It's like, we want the best for everybody. So with that being said, with all the information that we have, what can we do about it? I mean, right now we're bringing awareness, which is already a good start, but what's the future look for us?
Well, that principle, equal rights for all, special privileges for none, if you agree with that, tell your MP, tell your MLA. I'm amazed at how few people actually contact their own MP or MLA, including people who they'll go on at great length. They'll complain about, justifiably, legitimately complain about a bad situation, bad law, bad government policy. And then I'll ask, right, because I have these public meetings all over the place, from time to time. I'm in Vancouver, Saskatoon, Toronto, Ottawa, what have you. So there's public meetings. And then I'll ask, have you talked to your member of parliament about this? Or have you talked to your MLA about this provincially? And very often the answer is no. And it's like, okay, so at least send an email, bare minimum, to your MP and say, don't appreciate special rights or special status being given to any ethnic group. I believe in equal rights for all, special privileges for none. I urge you to repeal the Musqueam Agreement, which should be easy for them to do. They've already said publicly it doesn't really mean anything, and it doesn't mean Aboriginal title. So you know what, federal government, if that's true, if you're saying we should all relax because it doesn't mean what it says, and it's just some sort of proclamation of friendship. If that's, then tear it up and write a new document that says, we proclaim our friendship and we love each other very much, and sign that instead, right? Anyway, so there's my point: is contact your member of parliament, contact your MLA, and say equal rights for all, special privileges for none.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because that's a reminder for me to remind my audience that sending. I know people are discouraged, saying it doesn't do anything, but if there's 50,000, 100,000, 250,000 letters going to an MP, it actually does a difference. It makes a huge difference. They have to wow, let's break the internet. If you want to stand up for your property rights, send an email. And I'm going to make it very easy for my audience. Maybe I'll put in my description saying, here, click here. Here's the letters. So it takes you 30 seconds. We'll send out letters every day. Like, man, this Marc Nixon guy is getting these 40,000 to 50,000 letters on a daily basis. We can't stand him. That'll be good. That will be nice for me to report to my audience saying, hey, they're mad at us. Keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So John, I'd like to pivot here to Bill C-22, because a lot of people don't know about this bill, and I've done a little bit of homework on it. And this bill to me is far worse. And to me, it's incredible that there could be something far worse than Bill C-2, Bill C-8, and Bill C-9, which are, and so for the people that don't know what these bills are, Bill C-2 is basically censorship, or not censorship, is surveillance. So they could open your mail, they collect information, and they could give it to other countries. And once it leaves the borders, it's gone forever. It gives extraordinary powers to police where they could monitor you without a warrant. Bill C-8 is delete you from the internet. Bill C-9 is censorship bill, or self-censorship, because a couple of people go to jail for something. They're like, what, a Facebook post? And this guy's gone for 2 years. No one's going to be posting on Facebook anymore. So that's why it's called the censorship bill. But this Bill C-22, I can't explain it probably as well as you could explain it, but it is far worse than anything I just described. It goes back to George Orwell. Like, it's worse than George Orwell. But, in that book, it says, your TV's watching you, like every single piece of electronic is watching you at all time. And this bill is that bill. And it also collects it for a year. So they could go back and say, you were speeding in your car, because there's location services saying, I saw you sped today. You got a ticket for speeding. Now we're going to look at your electronic devices for the last year, and then see, I heard that potentially they could look at your entire driving history for the whole year based on the saved data. And the thing is that these liberal supporters are like, yeah, let's do that. It's going to be so good for Canada to have these new monitoring and all these things. First of all, they don't roll things back once they've rolled it out. But for the liberals that are watching this right now that voted liberal, if the conservatives win, do you want the conservatives to have that type of power over the liberals? Do you want them to go, you know what? I don't like these liberals, so I'm going to start monitoring and looking into somebody and then with Bill C-2, they could just look into it's the back door to looking at all your data anyway. They're building the framework with all these bills so that we don't have any privacy anymore. Imagine when you're a kid and you have a diary and you're writing in your diary, putting your mind and your notes into the diary so that later on you can look at it. I mean, there's probably nothing wrong inside that diary that should be of concern. Imagine somebody went and looked at your diary, your deepest thoughts. That is this. So, and what occurs when that happens is you self-regulate yourself so much that creativity is gone. This free, prosperous Western society that we've built is gone. Like we will rapidly go down as a society with this.
C22, we've got a petition against it on our website, www.jccf. So Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca. And it is one of the building blocks of the surveillance state. So there's several components to it, but I'll touch on one, which would be, if this passes, there's a new requirement that Rogers and TELUS and these big companies are going to be required to retain data on your cell phone usage and emails and texts for a full year, required to keep that information on file. Currently, companies might be doing that, but presumably most of them are not. And so technically the contents of the text are not there, but it'll be like, April the 20th, John Smith sent a text to Susan Brown at 3:45 p.m. Okay. So it's the texts and the emails and the phone calls, when you made them, who you made them to, and through the cell phone towers, they can also reconstruct where your physical location was. Now, police don't need that for law enforcement. Okay. This is what's creepy and privacy violating about it. And this is the surveillance state. What police have now, if police think that John Smith, my apologies to any John Smiths out there, if they think that John Smith is involved in terrorist activities, plotting to blow up the Parliament buildings or distributing child pornography or running a prostitution ring, if they think that John Smith is up to no good, they can go and get, they can serve a company with an order to keep all data in regards to John Smith that they now have. And
Forever.
so they can place that production order on a company. And so the company will then comply and they say, okay, well, we've got this data on John Smith. What this Bill C-22 does is it forces the companies to keep all the data on all of their customers for a full year. And that's just going to be a gold mine for government in terms of privacy violations.
Yeah, and the thing is like, do we trust the government with all of this data? Why do they need all of this? Like, why are they going to this?
Yeah,
why? It makes it.
Oh, it's to keep you safe, Mark. You should know this by now. We gotta protect you from the terrorists and the racists and the haters and the threats to national security. We got to protect you from Trump. We got to protect you from the Americans. We got to protect you. So in order to protect you, we've got to have all this information on everybody so we can protect you properly from the bad guys. It's always going to keep you safe. That's always the pretext or a variation of safety. Governments never take away our rights and freedoms without offering a nice sounding pretext.
Who's going to keep us safe from the government?
Well,
that's my question.
We got to go online and people can, so www.jccf.ca, look under petitions. There's a get involved or take action, look under petitions, and you can click. It'll help you to find your MP if you don't know who your MP is. And you can send an email to your member of parliament today, urging him to vote against Bill C-22.
Why is it that it seems like the Liberals are set bent on this and the Conservatives are using common sense in this? Like, I'm glad that we have a part. A lot of people say uni party, but I point out, I said it's not a uni party because it just feels like the Conservatives are protecting our freedoms and using common sense, and I support that. I mean, I see it and I'm like, well, thankfully there's somebody. What concerns me is that Mark Carney has his majority that nobody voted for, and he's going to ram through all these bills. So And in the Senate that they've stacked with Trudeau's, like 85 or 90% of the Senate is Trudeau appointed. That doesn't give me comfort at all.
The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And as long as Canadians are, if we're speaking truth to power, if we're actually exercising our charter freedoms, free expression, free association, freedom of conscience and religion, peaceful assembly, if we're peacefully exercising our charter rights and freedoms, especially our freedom of speech, if we keep on speaking out, it is very difficult for the tyrants to impose tyranny on a free and informed, educated, alert, awake people. So we defend ourselves by benefiting from independent media like you, Mark, like this podcast. And we've got, groups like we got the Rebel, we got Juno News, we got the Epoch Times, we got the Western Standard. We've got fantastic independent podcasters and YouTubers, and we have to keep ourselves well informed. You could listen to the CBC or Global or CTV from time to time, and see what they're up to. I mean, great.
Yeah, that's about it.
get a little bit of information from them as well, just to see what the enemies of the free society are saying. But take it with
what I do, John? You know what I do? I watch CBC so I could feel sick. and then listen to this. Once I feel sick, I know what feeling good feels like. When I'm like, what? I need to feel a little bit bad today so that I know what good feels. So I'm like, oh, okay, I know that this is bad, so I'm actually doing pretty good right now.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Like the tyrants can only impose tyranny on a population with a slave mindset of, we don't think, we don't speak, we don't analyze. We just like being told what to do. And unfortunately, there are Canadians like that. They do want to be told how to think, what to believe, what to do, how to live their lives. But when there's enough of us that say, no, we're human beings, we're adults, we decide for ourselves what is true or false. We think, we question authority,
But isn't that what living is? The unknown and being able to be creative and talking to your neighbor and coming up with better solutions and having fun and not being afraid of, a thought that might be, socially incorrect. That's what makes life so exciting, is the freedom of expression and thought. And I just can't imagine a world where it's not like that. And with all these bills, at the end of the day, it's if we don't continue to have these podcasts and having this open discussion, people won't know what's happening. And I mean, this is your time, Canada. If you have to listen to what John said. I'm going to continue to tell people, just, send the letter. Not only that, it's like, be courageous. I know it's courageous to make these videos. And, if you just did open up a social media account and just did your life story of what you're seeing and sharing it with others is so important. Don't be afraid. This is a time to step up and be courageous and talk to your neighbors. And, a lot of people, they go, I don't like the way that Mark does his podcast or show. So I watch another person. So what I'm trying to say about that is everybody has a unique perspective in life, has a unique experience, and also has a creativity to themselves that can be expressed that other people will enjoy. So, I might not hit the chord, but somebody else is like, hey, I like the way that they present the same kind of information, or they have different thought processes. But we're all kind of getting towards the same outcome, where we want everyone to prosper and have freedom and help your neighbor and have strong families and actually believe in something in this country and have hope and go back to our roots, where we could believe that somebody from a poor family could rise up and become the prime minister of this country. That's pretty exciting to think that that's a possibility in Canada. And I don't want to lose that.
Well, as long as we practice courage, speak truth to power, and just keep on going, don't give up, don't quit. We'll keep on fighting until we win.
John, how could people support you?
Go to our website, www.jccf.ca, Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms. You can sign up for a free email newsletter that we send out once or twice a month about our cases. If you want to donate, you're welcome to do that. We're a registered charity. We issue official tax receipts. And that's basically it. Come to our website, sign up for a newsletter, and consider making a donation.
Perfect. And make sure everybody leaves some comments, because from here in the comment section, I'm hoping to have you back on again, John, and then I can bring some of the questions and comments that people leave in the comment section. I'll talk to you and see if you're free in the future, and then we could do this again if you're up for it.
Right on. I look forward to it, Mark. Thank you so much.